I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to a special Year in Review episode of Southwest Magazine with the Premier of New Brunswick. Today I'll be sitting down with Premier Blaine Higgs in his office for a look back at 2022 and a look ahead to 2023. Premier Higgs, thanks for sitting down with me today for a Year in Review.
You're very welcome, Vicki. Glad to have you here.
Looks a lot different this year actually doing this in person. I think we spent 3 years talking to each other on Zoom, so that's a nice change, but obviously COVID-19 did leave a strain on the healthcare system. In what ways do you think that your government improved healthcare looking back at 2022?
Well, I think certainly during the pandemic, we were able to serve all patients here in the province, so it was a testament to our people and our ability to manage what we went through, and not that we ever want to go through that again, because we had our moments, but we did serve everyone here. I think what it taught us is that, when we focus on challenges that are more direct or acute, you really can make a difference. And we saw our two networks, both Vitality and Horizon, work very well together. And we, people were protecting their people coming and going, contact tracing. It didn't matter what area you're in, everyone was just pulling their weight to make a difference. So I think what we come off of that is thinking, okay, well, how do we maintain that momentum? So we know that it challenged our healthcare system, but we also know that we're not unique. Across the country, the healthcare system is being challenged dramatically. And we've said, our demographics are different. Mind you, our demographics our average age has gone down now, from 46 to 45 and a half. So that's from the influx of new people, about 60,000 people in the last 2 years. So we're at 820 now. Well, but so we have a higher population, more demands on healthcare as we would know it, but much of those immigrants certainly are younger. Now, but the challenge we have is saying healthcare is going to be delivered differently. I think 2 years ago, we had an issue looking at smaller hospitals and ERs, and it wasn't about the ERs, it was about being able to staff with the retirements coming. And so that's before COVID, and you're in a situation where you're looking at all of these cases where we're just not having staff, we're going to have people retiring. So you kind of know it's coming, and yet there wasn't any real appetite to make any change. I think the public now are expecting, okay, healthcare's job one. How we deliver, how we figure it out, what we need to do has to be job two. But job one's got to be, how do I get better healthcare? And if I'm on a wait list for 2.5, 3 years, and it's here, it's in one of the cities, but I can say, but you could get into Bathurst in 2 months. We need to have a view into the big picture. Well, what's someone going to do who say needs a knee surgery or needs a critical surgery? They'll go anywhere in the province. And that's the mindset that I think we have to develop, and the sharing of records through electronic means, so that community hospitals or the community clinics, doctors want to work in that setting. So you may not have the one-to-one relationship that you're used to, but you would have a clinical relationship. So you'd have a number of doctors working in a clinic, and when you go there, it could be any one of them, but they'll all have access to your files. Online healthcare, we've seen a big uptake in that through COVID, so that's allowed us to reduce the wait list. So I think the biggest challenge we have is to keep the momentum rolling, that the way we deliver and manage healthcare has to change. Mm-hmm. It can't be done in silos. It can't be done by individuals. It has to be done organizationally, so that we look at a network of 22 hospitals and our capabilities within and say, how do we manage this in our own province, and how do we do so while at the same time delivering our service in both official languages? So
what will be the biggest goal that you're setting for yourself for healthcare for 2023?
Primary access would be number one. The people can get a doctor when they need it. And then having the critical surgery wait list drop. So if that, in whatever fashion that might be, in terms of it's critical to anyone at any time, but if there are cases that are severe and they're being treated as that, we need to find a way to get access. And that access, you'd say, well, hopefully that's going to be in New Brunswick, because we need the access. So it's not about where, it's going to be about how and how long. Mm-hmm. And because it's got to be a patient-focused healthcare. It's not about, it's not all about the doctors, it's not all about the nurses, it's not all about us, it's about patients. And are you feeling the difference in the healthcare system? Mm-hmm. And we need that sort of mindset change. So that's my goal. And hip and knee surgery, we're ramping that up in the relation of pockets of high performance surgeries around the clock. And we're doing that up in Waterville. We did it in St. Joe's. We'll do it elsewhere. Cataracts, we're doing it in Bathurst. Reducing the wait list from 3 years down to less than 6 months. And doing that within 2 to 3 months. Yeah. So it's those kind of areas where we get the big backlogs, and how do we make a difference to people that are inflicted in mobility issues, health issues, in minimizing that time.
Now, you mentioned one of the silver linings to COVID-19, the population growth of New Brunswick. I think we passed 800,000 people in the time of COVID. Yeah. But the flip side of that is the housing crisis and the impact it has there, and homelessness as well. St. Stephen, a town that we cover often, has its first winter homeless shelter. It's a warming station, but essentially what it does is give people without a home a place to stay. Mm-hmm. How is the government supporting the housing crisis?
Well, we have put $100 million into home construction in the homeless and subsidized housing area. It's a challenge because many contractors we're finding it hard to find people to build homes. But I think there's also a model on the homeless side of it to look at differently, because the drugs are playing a role today like they never played before. And we have many repeat people going to the hospitals, going to ERs. So when you talk about trying to download or to reduce the workload in the ERs so that when people come in critically ill, they're able to be treated quickly and having room at the hospital for them, you see a lot of repeat people coming, and a lot of it is because they have nowhere else to go. So whether it be someone that's in addiction, whether it be mental health, whether it be homeless, they have nowhere else to go. So I think having like a mental health addiction center, having a treatment center that we can really help people get off of drugs. And today, with the workforce shortage we have, we can do a full suite of helping people get the treatment they need as long as they need, having that ongoing interaction after the fact, and moving right into a job. And so we can stay connected. I think in our struggles before, people have not had that ability to have the ongoing treatment. They'll go into a center, go in for treatment, 6 months maybe, come out, but then they're right back into the same old program. Mm-hmm. So I'm very focused on areas that you've seen maybe for the first time in St. Stephen, but we're seeing unprecedented numbers in Moncton. Mm-hmm. The drugs have brought a whole new realm of challenge to this, but we are going to address it.
Mm-hmm. In what ways is the province working with municipalities like St. Stephen that are taking these proactive roles to do something?
Well, it is to build new shelters or to open up new facilities, and we've met with municipal leaders in that case. So it's certainly there's been a big move with additional housing, but it can't be just the housing. It has to be a treatment program that eventually helps the individual onto a better way of life.
Mm-hmm. So an ecosystem of support.
It's a whole suite of support.
On the topic, I'll use St. Stephen as an example again, on the topic of amalgamation. It's affected a lot of rural districts quite incredibly. Why is now the time for this local governance reform?
Well, what we were finding more and more is there wasn't a good representation in rural New Brunswick. So essentially, you were getting fewer and fewer people that were being part of the LSDs or getting engaged in activities of oversight. So then you have a lot of cases where you either don't have anyone, or we have to put them in, by direct assignment. Mm-hmm. So the time, and it's been on the books since 2008. So it's been around for a while, and it's only been magnified because of this support issue, and not recognizing that regions by themselves need to be that strength and that hub. Mm-hmm. And some are stronger than others, but we want to have the capabilities and the amenities that communities can afford the amenities they have, but it'll be attractive to people coming in. Like I move here, I may not have a rink next door, but I've got one within 10 minutes. Or I may not have a hospital right here, but I got one within short distance. So it's like having that bigger scope of kind of operation allows that community and that region to have greater support from government, but also greater capabilities. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to develop that right across the province, so that there's a standard, and no matter where you live in New Brunswick, there's that standard that you can go anywhere because you're going to have access to what you need the most.
Is there a chance that these lines could be redrawn? I'm looking at an area like Eastern Charlotte, where you see Blacks Harbor and St. George becoming the same community. I'm very curious to see how this goes. I will be covering that town council. But if it doesn't work, is there room to change?
Yes, there is a mechanism that after a few years that you do look at it and say, you know, are there changes need to be made? So I think, as with everything, there's always a chance, and there's always a learning that might come out of it that would warrant a review. It kind of goes with government.
You've put forth an ambitious plan for French immersion reform that will go into place next year for, I believe, kindergarten and grade 1. Why is now the time to make this quite dramatic change?
Because the previous program has not worked. For over 50 years, we've developed a significant streaming in our English system. We have kids that go into French immersion just to avoid the English system. And we're graduating less than 30% of our kids to speak both official language in an officially bilingual province. So unless we get on a path of having a system that actually works for all of our kids, then there's an inequity there, so there's an unfairness there. The Francophone system would graduate probably 95 or 96% bilingual students. We need to be up in that range itself. My kids all took French immersion, but none of them found it fun. It was very academic, and it was, my oldest daughter would often say, and as we traveled around the province, particularly during the campaigns, she said, "Dad, I had no idea what the whole province had to offer. I had no experience with the Francophone culture. I didn't know the vibrancy. We didn't learn any of that in class. We took, you know, math and science, and if we went on a field trip, we went to Quebec. We didn't know what New Brunswick really had." And so it's like, well, why isn't this fun? Why isn't this an experience? How many people open up their math book after they graduate? Now, maybe if they go on into engineering or they go on into courses at university, maybe so. But if you graduate from high school, you're not likely to go back and review your math book. So it's out of your mind. But yet we thought that teaching a second language in very academic subjects was going to be fun and cause people to do more. It actually seemed to be the opposite, because we found kids that were dropping out of French immersion even in the later years in order to get their English marks up and go to university, if they're going to English university. So the program that we have and been proposed was actually working in Bathurst for many years, and it was getting better results than the French immersion program. But the government of the day, whenever it was back 20 years ago, decided, oh no, we should have standardized the system. Well, it didn't seem to be a matter what was working or not. It was just, we're going to standardize the system. Well, if you're going to standardize the system, we'll do it with a system that works. And so now we feel, and you know, having the former Deputy Minister, John McLaughlin, who was traveling the province and looked at the issues and knows them firsthand from his experience in education. The Minister, Hogan, who is a 35-year educator himself, knows the challenges directly in the classroom. So we can't get on this yo-yo thing, you know, grade 1, grade 3, grade 1, grade 3. That wasn't solving anything. But this is a comprehensive review where you can start out, you all learn the basics, and then if you want to progress in later years into a French immersion style, I mean in terms of learning to a greater level, you can do that in the high school years. You want to move into math, sciences, you can do that. It's just having the option to follow your dream and to do it in both official languages.
Now, I know the concern in more rural areas is, will we have enough teachers to pull this off? Is there a recruitment strategy in place?
Well, there is, but of course the teachers, there will be kind of a balance there, because the teachers that were teaching like full French immersion, the subject load will be the same. So they will be, and the classrooms are going to be very similar now. They're not going to have, we're not going to have an elite classroom and another one. So we're basically going to have a system that the mentors in the classrooms can help kids that need help. You know, it can be as it was when we all can recall how valuable that is, having students that can help one another. But in the teacher side of it, you know, we have a shortage rate today in the current system. But in technology too, what can we do more of? And to learn in the younger grades, it's not as difficult as the high level of learning in the senior grades. So we're working through and doing the consultations now, but have a program laid out that basically to talk to the teachers and everyone about. But so far, you know, the response has been very good, And I think certainly the Anglophone teachers and the Anglophone system, were looking for something that was different and more, I think, reflective of their challenges they were facing in classrooms.
I think this time last year, I would never have predicted gas prices, diesel prices, oil prices being what they are now. How is the government supporting families, especially as we go into the winter months, to get through this very financially draining time?
Well, we didn't predict the Gulf or the war in Ukraine, that's for sure. But we did predict higher prices because with the taxes that are rolling out, the carbon tax and all of the output-based taxes that are going on fuel supply, it's inevitable. Prices were going up. So we're at levels now higher than we ever imagined. It's nice to see them down a little bit of late, but still, when was $1.40 considered a bargain? We've rolled out in both cases here over the last several months, but just recently as well, a food and fuel program for those on social assistance and are being hit hard by these high prices. We've rolled out a home heat program that is unique, I would say, in the country, but it's basically, we have such a high number of our houses. I think about 65% are on electric baseboard heat. So with the heat pump program, for those less than 70,000 earning, that'll have a huge impact on their electric heating bill. And we know electric heat's going to go up in price. We're 30% cheaper than our counterparts in Atlantic Canada now in electricity. So our prices are going up, but we hope that consumption will go down, and so the individuals will see kind of a net zero change because of the heat pump program. So in other areas, we've given more flexibility to UB so they can manage the spikes better, because we're seeing some differences there between us and Nova Scotia. At the end of the day, I feel that the carbon tax, we put all that money right back into tax reduction or environmental projects, every dime of it, but it is a cost that the people at the pumps are paying.
New Brunswick made history last year, having created the first systemic racism commissioner role for any province in Canada. What is your reaction to the report that recently came out, and how do you plan to implement things from that into policy?
There's 86 recommendations, so there's quite a list there. And I haven't read the report yet, but I have reviewed, looked at the recommendations. So we'll meet in the new year with my colleagues, and we'll kind of see, okay, what can we react on quickly? What more effort is needed in many of them to determine what are the elements that needed to change. I think the big learning here is like we've done something for the first time in the country. It's taking a role and really taking a stab at, can we really be more understanding and receptive to the needs of such a population that is becoming more and more diverse every day. So it applies to so many cultures that are now within our province. So we have to think, and I think we're focused on that because we're seeing more and more, right? It was some that 10 years ago it wouldn't have been the same, but we have to recognize that what we may have thought was okay to many may be, but it's not okay to some, and we need to figure out how to be okay to everybody.
I was reading a report by the Fraser Institute that ranked you the #1 premier in Canada in terms of budget. What is your perspective now going into 2023?
Well, it's nice to be recognized in that regard, because I think there's a way for us to do what we need as a province and be fiscally accountable to our taxpayers as well, because we're managing everyone's money, and it has allowed us to reduce taxes, but it's also allowed us to put record investments into hospitals and record investment in housing, and we can continue to capital investments. Roads construction, we maintain our budget the way it was, even though inflation has taken it up high, by about 20%. But we're still doing all the projects. The biggest opportunity there is that we still have a $12 billion debt, and there is no reason for us to run deficits in our province. We've had unexpected revenue from the population growth, unexpected revenue in people spending, and returns on HST and sales tax and corporate tax. And the population growth has allowed the transfer payments that are higher than we would have, had expected in the past. So it does give us a window of opportunity here. So you have to decide, do we spend for the day? Like I got a new job. I don't know how long I'm going to have it, but I get more money. So do I spend that money but I don't know how long I'm going to have this job, or I don't know how long I'm going to have this income, but I got it today. So much of life today is done that way, and I don't want to put the province in that position. I want to have a sustainable path. And I've said in critical areas like healthcare, we'll spend whatever we need. It's not a problem. But tell me how that's going to benefit patients. How are people going to have better care by doing this? And if you can't explain that in real terms, then I have great difficulty in just saying, well, give us more money and we'll do better. And I know that's a discussion we have federally, and I am one that believe that we need to have criteria, that here's where we're going to make improvements. The federal government doesn't need to know how we're going to do it, but I think it's a fair question of, are you going to do it?
When you look back, not just on this year, but your whole time in office, what do you see as your greatest accomplishments?
Well, I guess, going back, if we, in finance, we put in the pension reform, which was everyone was complaining about that. And it has worked out just fine. And it just had a indexing of 5.5% or something. And the pensions are secure, they're maintained, they're managed outside of government, and no one has any complaints. But it was a horrendous battle at the time. So change is hard for many. I kind of have a little philosophy that work is fun and change is good. Now the work is fun part, sometimes that can be not so fun. But the change is good is something we all have to embrace change. We don't do that well in New Brunswick. We very kind of get locked into this is the way it is and this is the way it's going to be, and that's going to be our biggest challenge. So going forward, so I talked about the pension reform. We said we wanted to get balanced and a sustainable path forward. We have done that. And the province, we had 5 consecutive surpluses. And there's no reason not to have surplus in New Brunswick. There really isn't, unless politically it becomes just an absolute abuse of the system. Then you get to, okay, how do we make the changes and improvements in health, in education, which now we're rolling out? How do we find solution for mental health, addiction, and treatment so our homeless population doesn't grow? I don't want to be a situation like we see in BC. And so there's a path there, and I want to get on it. And we need the help of professionals to get there, but the goal has got to be treatment. Mm-hmm. It's got to be, how do I get off drugs? Not how do I live with drugs, how do I get off drugs? And what's it going to take to help you, get to be a better lifestyle? And then in the healthcare system, a system where we manage and integrate our systems in a way that we have the best healthcare in the country, because we have the potential. But a lot of times we can't see the forest for the trees, or we got blinders on, and we can't change. We have to always embrace change, innovation, and look at ways of doing things differently. My whole career was spent doing that. And so healthcare is the big challenge that we're facing, and we got to find a path through it.
And finally, what will be first on the agenda for 2023?
Oh, it will be healthcare. There's no question. It'll be the path on healthcare. Clear key targets of performance that mean something to people every day in their everyday life. I know it's easy to criticize, but I know in hospitals, in care, everyone's working, hard. And you hear great stories of people going in and they're saying, look, I couldn't have better care. People looked after me and it was amazing. But it seems that most times and things that really get out there are the times that it didn't work out so good. But for every time that it didn't work out so good, we have hundreds of patients that have had great health care.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do a year in review with me today. Happy holidays and Happy New Year.
Well, the very same to you, Vicki. It's my pleasure. So Merry Christmas to you.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO Television.